हरि ओम। वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। Namaste friends. Welcome to the 22nd session of the series Gift, Gita for Inner Freedom and Transformation, a study of select verses from the Bhagavad Gita based on Shankara Bhashya. We continue with the 5th chapter, Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Gita is a moksha shastra. The central theme of chapter 5 is Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga alone leads to inner renunciation. External renunciation can be practiced only to a certain extent. Discovery of our higher nature helps us to understand our true nature is relationalness. We have to move through stages and claim this higher nature, starting with I am not the body-mind complex, but I am consciousness, pervading this body and everybody. I invite Dr. Divakar to introduce and moderate this session. Over to you, Dr. Divakar.
Thank you, Neeta. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om. We are studying Bhagavad Gita chapter 5. And of course, all of this study is possible because of the Avichinna Parampara of all the Gurus, starting from Sadashiva, who is the Dakshinamurti, Bhagavan Krishna, and all the Acharyas, and our immediate Acharya, our Asmadacharya is Paramarthananda ji, and our Guru facilitator, Dr. Timmappa Hegade, and a deep sense of gratitude and pranamams to all the Gurus. And because of all of these Gurus, we are able to conduct these satsangs. Karma Yoga, we have completed in the 3rd chapter. Jnana Sannyasa Yoga, we have completed in the 4th chapter. Now we are in the Karma Sannyasa Yoga. We know that all these 3 chapters come in the Pratama Shatkam. Pratama Shatkam deals with the Tvam Padartha, nature of the individual. Bhagavad Gita itself, as Neeta pointed out, is called as the Moksha Shastra. The methodology of teaching of Bhagavad Gita is called as Sankshepa Vistharabhya Bodhana. It means that there is an initial summary called as Upakrama Sankshepa, and then the final summary called as Upasamhara Sankshepa, and in between the elaboration, the body of the teaching called as Visthara. So 2nd chapter is the initial summary, and the 18th chapter is the final summary. Now, the chapter 3 and chapter 4 and also chapter 5 are the elaborations of the teachings given in chapter 2. If we have actually seen this carefully, chapter 2 itself has completed. In chapter 2, Krishna has completed the entire teaching, including Atma Gnanam. Because the subject matter is so subtle, and also Arjuna was not very much prepared in his mind, Krishna decides to elaborate these teachings step by step. And this methodological teaching is going on from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th chapter. So this is all the expansion which is given in the 2nd chapter. Chapter 5 itself, Karma Sannyasa Yoga, deals with Vidvat Sannyasa. Now, this is a terminology which most of us have, listened to or known about this before. In simple terms, Vidvat Sannyasa means Nididhyasanam. Nididhyasanam is what? It is the ultimate step which is required for every sadhaka to become a Jivan Mukta, to get this JM degree, Jivan Mukta degree. And we will look at the different types of sannyasas later on when we are studying this chapter. The other topics which are completed or covered in this chapter 5 are the types of lifestyles, also called as Nishtadvayam. There are lifestyles of Grihastha and Sannyasa. Of course, these were the questions raised by Arjuna in the previous chapters, asking what is better for me, whether Sannyasa is better or the Grihastha is better. His mind is towards Sannyasa because he doesn't want to fight the war, because of the Dvandva, all the confusion in his mind, because his intellect was incapacitated because of the Ahankara and Mamakara. Mostly Mamakara because of his attachment towards his Guru and then Bhishma Pitamaha. Now, Krishna makes it very clear, and also Swamiji Paramarthananda ji beautifully explains this. There is a choice with regards to the lifestyle. One could take up either Grihastha or Sannyasa ashrama in order to know about the ultimate reality, which is the self-knowledge. And then the other topics which are covered are Sadhana Dvayam, two types of sadhanas, Karma Yoga and Gnana Yoga. We have studied Karma Yoga elaborately in the chapter 3. With regards to these sadhanas, there is no choice. Everybody will have to go through these sadhanas. There is a choice with regards to the lifestyle, what ashrama they want to be in, but there is no choice as far as the sadhana, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga is concerned. Karma Yoga also includes Upasana Yoga. We should remember that. Upasana Yoga is mental quietening activities, mental quietening exercises. Then there is a discussion of phalam of this Gnana Yoga. And of course, the final segment of chapter 5 is introduction towards Dhyanam, the meditation. Because the next chapter, chapter 6, deals exclusively with the Dhyanam, or it is also, therefore, it is also called as Dhyana Yoga or Atma Samyama Yoga. Now, we are studying this section of Jnana Yoga, which is a central theme of the chapter 5. This starts from the verse 13 and it goes on till verse 21. And these are also called as, Swamiji makes it very clear that these are also called as Nididhyasana shlokas. What is a Nididhyasana shloka? Any shloka which reminds us about the Atma, the nature of the Atma, and that Atma is we ourselves. We have seen this through Mahavakyas, Aikya of Jivatma and Paramatma. So, Nididhyasana shloka, for example, Atma Shatkam, Mano Buddhi Ahankara Chittani Naham, and Pratasmarami. There are so many such stotras which are also called as Nididhyasana stotras. Any shloka or mantra which talks about the nature of the Atma, which is ultimately our own higher nature, or Nididhyasana shlokas. So, therefore, this is an important section of not only this chapter but the entire Bhagavad. Now, let's briefly look at the different meanings of sannyasa. This is beautifully explained by Tadatmananda ji, who is a part of Arshavidya. And Tadatmananda ji is also a direct disciple of Swami Dayananda Saraswati. And of course, Swami Paramarthananda ji is also a direct disciple of Swami Dayananda. So, one meaning or the common meaning of sannyasa is renunciation of the worldly activities because of the circumstances. For example, if I am feeling too stressed with my work, I decide that I am not going to work from tomorrow. I will just sit at home and put my feet up. It's out of frustration because of forces in the external environment. And this is one type of sannyasa. This has nothing to do with spirituality, of course. And then the next type is life of a monk, dedication for the spiritual growth. For example, there is a desire to know about oneself and they give up the material life and go and join an ashrama. This is another type of sannyasa ashrama. This can be called as Vividisha sannyasa. There is a desire to learn about self-knowledge and then they go to an ashrama or take up to sannyasa ashrama. And then the next one is renunciation of the karma phala. Now, this we have seen it in the karma yoga. When we do any karmas, there is always a result or the phalam for this karma, not owning up to the the karma phala, the outcome of our actions, accepting all of them as Ishvara prasada. This is a part of karma yoga. In other words, bhoktatva bhava is not there. That is one type of sannyasa. Another meaning is the renunciation of the doership or the kartatva bhava. Everything happens because of the Prakriti. Everything is because of the nature itself. This is also again is a part of Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga, as we know, is the right action with right attitude. Now, right action is all the Pancha Mahayagnas, all the right dharmic actions, and right attitude is doing our duties as the dedication to the God Ishvara Arpana Bhava and receiving all the prasada as the God's gift only. It's like prasada of the God Ishvara Prasada Bhava. So both 3 and 4 can be equated to the Karma Yoga. And then the ultimate sannyasa, which is a state of enlightenment. It is the Atma Gnanam. It is realizing and anchoring to the knowledge that I am not the doer. Everything is in the presence of the Atma alone. Not only me, in fact, everybody. And this is the samatvam that one gets because of this Atma Gnanam. This samadrishti is elaborated in the verses today also. And this type of sannyasa, one who already knows about Gnanam and then, in a way renounces all the actions and knows that they all belong to body, mind only and not to oneself, which is the Atma, is also called as Vidvat Sannyasa. So briefly, let's look at the differences between Vividisha Sannyasa and Vidvat Sannyasa. Vividisha Sannyasa is like vivid. Vividly, we can see that there is an external change. This is somebody who is yearning to know what is the self-knowledge. There is mumukshatvam. There is tivra mumukshatvam. And therefore, they renunciate the worldly activities and take up to sannyasa. Vividisha sannyasa, they still have to go through the sadhanas like karma yoga, upasana yoga, and gnana yoga. As told earlier, there is no option there. Whether one is in the sannyasa ashrama or the grihastha ashrama, they will have to go through the sadhanas. And then they devote themselves for learning these scriptural studies. And then they fulfill the gnana yogyata and get the gnanam, and then they anchor in that gnana. Whereas the vidvat sannyasa is the renunciation of a knower. This sadhaka is already aware of the gnanam. This sadhaka has gone through shravanam, a period of learning the scriptural studies through a competent acharya. And all the doubts regarding these studies is also clarified through mananam. And this sadhaka is also practicing nididhyasanam. So therefore, this vidvat sannyasa equates to nididhyasanam. So that person who is doing it is, of course, vidvat sannyasi. And these sadhakas are free from any rules, obligations, and external symbols. They are always detached to the material world by completely anchoring to the Atma-gnana. Now, we have seen the 14th verse in the last class where the kartatva bhava of the Atma was elaborated. So, if Atma doesn't do any actions, who does that then? How is these actions done? We know that the actions are only at the level of the body mind. How is these actions are done? A beautiful word of swabhavastu pravartante is explained there. So it is the innate nature of the body mind to be active. Nobody can be completely devoid of the actions. You cannot get rid of karmas. That is also covered beautifully in the 3rd chapter. So mind and body is the apara prakriti, which is the lower nature of the God. Again, this is elaborated in the chapter 7, where the God Ishvara talks about the higher nature, which is the Atma, which is also called as Para Prakriti, and then the Apara Prakriti, which is made out of Vinna Prakriti Rashtada, the 8 component, the Panchabhutas and Mano Buddhi Ahankara, the cosmic Mano Buddhi Ahankara. The combination of these 8 factors will lead to the palpable universe that we are experiencing, including the body mind. So, body mind is a lower nature of the God. Higher nature is, of course, Atma, and all the actions belongs to the body mind only. Just like how the innate nature of the sugar is sweetness, and the innate nature of the fire is the light, the innate nature of the body mind is to do actions. So who does the actions is the body mind, whereas the Atma is Akarta. With this, we move on to today's satsang. I invite Ramaji to explain about verse 15, please.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, verse 15. Chapter 5 bridges Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga with renunciation as the link. Verses 13 to 17 indicate progression in Karma Sannyasa. The verse 15 deals with Vidva Sannyasam, also called Nididhyasanam, resulting in Sarvatra Brahma Darshanam. In the verse 14, Adi Shankaracharya indicated Apara Prakritihi from Vyavaharika Drushtihi using the word Swabhavataha. The same is spoken in this verse 15 from the Paramarthika Drushtihi. The sannyasi is in Swaswarupa forever and he is called Vibhuhu in this shloka. He is beyond the effects of all types of karma phalas, therefore he is abhoktaha. With this background, let us analyze the verse 15, and the verse says, Nadatte kasyachit papam na chaiva sukrutam vibhuhu agnanena vrutam gnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. The translation: the omnipotent neither accepts anybody's sins or virtues. Knowledge remains covered by ignorance. Thereby, the creatures become deluded. Now, let us see the meaning of the verse. Scriptures define Brahman as Satyam Gnanam Anantam Brahma. Vibhuhu is the omnipotent, that is Vyapakatvat Vibhuhu. And the word Vibhuhu shows the Anantam aspect of Brahman. Vibhuhu, like Vashi and Prabhuhu, describe the Brahman, but here it refers to a karma sannyasi because of his mentality. Papam sukrutam implies karma phalam. Papam is the result of a bad action. Punyam generated by different forms of saguna brahma upasanas or sukrutam. Both of them bind and shackles one to samsara. This is at the Paramarthika level. But at the Vyavaharika level, one has to follow Punyam and Papa rules. They are all in the realm of Maya. None of them affect the Karma Sannyasi who has grown beyond them. He is Nishkriyaha like Atma, and therefore he is Akarta and Abhokta. The next word is Kasyachit Papam Sukrutam Na Adatte. Na Adatte means Na Grunhati. Bhagavan does not take away sins or virtues of even his own devotees. Contradicting this, in the shloka 66 of 18th chapter, Sri Krishna says, Sarva papebhyo moksha ishyami. A karma sannyasi will be freed from all the karma phalas. A karma sannyasi will be guided to manage the burden of papam and punyam through karma yoga, and he attains chitta shuddhihi and thereby gnanam and liberation. This is the view of Sri Krishna in that verse. Agnanena avrutam gnanam. All creation is because of Mula Avidya, which is Trigunatmika Maya. This Maya functions in two ways: Avarana Shaktihi veiling the Atma, while Vikshepa Shaktihi projecting it as Dehadi Anatma. Gnanam is the awareness that I am the Supreme Brahman, or Atma Anatma Vivekaha. And the discriminatory power is Viveka Vijnanam. A Gnani has Viveka Vijnanam, whereas the intellect of a Agnani is covered by ignorance. Therefore, Sri Krishna says, Tena Mushyanti Jantavaha. Jantuho is Pashuhu, the deluded ones, due to Moha, and they are referred as creatures. Jantavaha indicates Avivekinaha Samsarinaha, that is, indiscriminate people. Tena refers to Adhyasaha, delusion. Avarana Shaktihi resulting in Vikshepa deludes the Jivaha, just as a rope snake. Avaranam, covering the rope, generates the snake adhyasa. Similarly, ignorance of the Atma generates Atma adhyasa. This adhyasa is viparita bhavana leading to mohaha. Viparita bhavana is the misconception born out of ajnanam. Mushyanti means adhyasam janayati, adhyasam kuruvanti cha. That is, people get into moha or delusion as karomi, I am doing all these karmas, and karayami, engaging others to do it and enjoy their results. The viparita bhavana associated with karta and bhokta causes threefold bhayam in them. Papa bhayam being a karta, naraka bhayam the karma phalam, punarjanma bhayam being a bhokta. Thus, viparita bhavana, kartrutva bhoktrutvam, bhayam are intimately connected and dilutes a person. Through nididhyasanam, a seeker eliminates these errors that leads to viparita bhavana. He adds values like shraddha for disciplined life, leading to samskara, the habit of disciplined life. The seeker eradicates bhayam, adds values and samskaras to experience the self forever. I would like to quote Parama Puja Swami Dayananda Saraswati's definition of values. A value is a value only when the value of the value is valued by you. Thank you. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you, Ramaji, for a beautiful explanation. So here in this verse, we have seen Atma as Abhokta. Previous verse talked about Atma as Akarta. Here we have seen Atma as Abhokta. Therefore, Atma has no punyam or papam. Okay, and we have seen that in the Kaivalya Upanishad, and all Upanishads talk about this. Na punyam, na papam. And also Atma Shatkam also deals with it. So any karma phalas we refer to belongs to the body mind only. When we talk about our body is going through this prarabdha, we are talking in terms of body mind only, not from the Atma point of view. So again, vibhuhu, the word which is used, which is talking about the Atma. And we know that avidya, the ignorance that we have, is what will lead to the kama, all the activities that we are doing, the desires, and these desires will lead to karma. Because of this, the highest form of ignorance, which is ajnana, which is actually at a karana sharira level, our causal body, we continue to identify with this body mind. And therefore, that is what will make us delusional. Ajnanena avritam jnanam. This self-knowledge, our true nature, is covered by the ignorance. Ignorance which is innate. In fact, the avarana of the Maya is there from the birth itself. And therefore, we continue with that delusion. We continue to identify with ourselves. We identify as, instead of just saying, I am, we don't stop there. I am a man. I am a doctor. I am a father. We go on to identify with the body-mind complex, and with that, the consequences with that also. Now, with this, we go on to the next very important and very significant verse. I invite Dr. Sandhya to kindly explain the verse 16.
Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Chanting the verse, Jnanena tu tad ajnanam yesham nashitam atmanaha tesham adityavajnanam prakashayati tatparam. Looking at the word meaning, for those yesham in whom the ignorance, that is the ajnanam, is destroyed. Nashitam, the next slide please. Nashitam, by the wisdom, jnanena. For them, tesham, the wisdom, the jnanam, lights up, prakashayati, like the sun, tatpara. Adityavat prakashayati tatpara. So the glory of jnanam or knowledge is revealed in this verse. And from verse 13 to 21, the Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Jnanam is discussed. And the focus in these verses is on Nididhyasana, Ajnani Avritam Jnanam, just as Dr. Divakar explained. The previous verse spoke about the jivas who are being deluded by ignorance. However, by true knowledge, the delusion with regard to Atma or the self will go away. That is, the delusion of Kartrutvam, Bhoktritvam, and the bhayam of Papa, Naraka, and Punarjanmam also goes away. So, Jnanam removes Ajnanam, and having destroyed ignorance, delusion, and fear, that knowledge reveals the Param Brahm. Jnanam is often compared to the fire. Just like the fire, that Jnanam also has twofold functions. One is illuminative and the other is destructive. One is positive and the other is negative. Jnanam destroys Ajnanam, Moham, Bhaya, we've seen. It illumines Tatparam, the Param Brahma, like the sun, Adityavat, clearly and completely. So what is clear and complete? The realization of the self-knowledge that I am Nitya, Shuddha, Buddha, Mukta. That Brahman I am, Aham Brahmasmi, is what becomes clear and complete. So Jnanam here is the true knowledge regarding myself. It is Atma Vishaya Viveka Jnanam. What Swami Paramarthananda beautifully explains as discriminative knowledge about the self. We don't actually lack this knowledge about ourselves, but discriminative self-knowledge is what we lack. We say, I'm so-and-so, managing director of a company, HOD, etc. At some point in our spiritual journey, we need to have this discrimination and hand over everything after the I am to the body-mind complex. And the I should only refer to the consciousness component of the higher I. And this dissociation cannot happen overnight. It can happen only with Vedanta Vichara when we get Viveka Jnana. So we move from confusion to clarity. And for those true seekers, the Nyayam Vastu, that is the object of knowledge, is viewed clearly and completely like the sun, Krishna says in this verse. This Nyayam Vastu is the Tatparam, Parabrahman, Paramartha Tattvam, which is the ultimate reality. Yatha Aditya Avabhashiyati, just as the sun reveals the Samastam Rupam Jatam, the entire object clearly and completely, Tadvat, the Jnana Surya also reveals the Brahman clearly and completely. There's a beautiful Doha in the Ramcharitmanas in the Uttarakanda, verse 78, which says, despite the combined light of the moon and all the visible stars in the cloudless sky, the night does not go. But the moment the sun rises, the night makes a hasty retreat. So this clarity and completeness can come only with Shravanam and Mananam. Through Shravanam, we acquire the knowledge. And Mananam makes it clear and complete. It becomes Dridam Paroksha Jnanam. With Nidhi Dhyasanam, there is no new knowledge or mystic experience. Only a change from the triangular format to the binary format. The word Jnanam in this verse here refers to Aham Brahmasmi Vritti Jnanam. Interestingly, Jnanam has two meanings. One, the Swarupa Jnanam, which is the pure consciousness that is there in all of us. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, that is the pure consciousness in all of us. This Jnanam can never destroy ignorance, because if that were so, all of us would be Jnanis. So the pure consciousness Atma not only cannot destroy ignorance, it actually supports it. It provides the Sat and the Chit and illumines and lends existence to the ignorance. Then which is the Jnanam which destroys ignorance? It is the Vritti Jnati, which is in the form of the thought or the Vritti, which has to be generated in the mind by our effort. And that effort is Shravanam, Mananam, Guru Upadesha, as we saw in chapter 4, verse 34. Tadviddhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, consistent, systematic study of the scriptures under a competent guru for a considerable length of time. And with this attainment of divine knowledge, one can never, nor in any circumstance, go back to delusion or ajnana. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Sandhya, for a brilliant explanation. of this wonderful verse. So you mentioned about the qualities of a Shishya, quoting the 4th chapter verse, Tad Vidhi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya. Pranipatena, prostration. Through what? Through our Vinaya, through our Nishta, through our open-mindedness, by having Shraddha, Sevaya. Only when we do all these things, then the Atma Gnanam given by the Guru, it will manifest into something meaningful for us. The transformation from the information can happen. So we've explained this beautifully. The Gnanam has two components. One is, projecting, giving the right knowledge. The other one is destroying the wrong knowledge. When the light comes, light has arrived. That is a positive. And it has also removed the darkness. There are two components were beautifully explained. And you have also highlighted that the moksha is possible only through the Jnana Marga. So moksha is nothing but the complete security, happiness, and peace. It's a permanent security, happiness, and peace in this life itself. And in order to get to this Jnana Marga, we have all other margas which are prerequisite margas. You can take any path, karma, bhakti, raja yoga, kriya yoga. All of them are preparatory margas. And ultimately, the only road which they all should lead to is the Jnana Marga. And with the self-inquiry, beautifully explained. This was by giving a wonderful example of the sunlight as told by Bhagavan Krishna. So you have talked about the association of Ajnana and how Moha, and that leads to all the samsara. You have beautifully explained. And now we will move on to the next verse. I invite Dr. Komal Prasad, please, to explain this next verse, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. 17th verse. Tadbuddhaya tadatmana tanishta tatparayana gachanti apunaravrittim gnana nirdhuta kalmasha. Those who have the knowledge of that Brahman and who have that Brahman as internalized Atma and who are established in that Brahman and who have that Brahman as the supreme goal and whose impurities are completely destroyed by knowledge, they attain the goal of from where nobody can return back. So that is apunaravrittim. So in this verse, Sri Krishna talks about various stages of sadhana that a person has to go through for inner freedom and transformation. See in the next verse, in the next slide we see, these are the stages for inner freedom and transformation. That is the gift we are seeing. That's a Gita for inner freedom and transformation. And what are the stages? Swamiji rearranges these terms in a particular order, which gives a stage-wise approach to reach that moksha. And what is the first stage is tat parayana, valuing, discovering higher self. We need to value that. We need to, it's not a side business, it's not a hobby. It's like what we are doing is the ultimate purpose in life. We have a goal. Okay. And what is that ultimate goal? I should be happy and secure. Nobody can object that one. I need to be happy and secure. And it's not because of external conditions that I must be happy and secure, but in spite of external conditions, I need to have that inner freedom. That's the gift. And this inner free self is moksha. Moksha is the capacity to be comfortable even when the situations are not to my expectations. Therefore, the advantage is I am not afraid of future. With Guru Shastra Upadesha, in the next stage, we come to know that I do not want to change the world around us. I need not change my wife. I need not change my husband. I need not change my behavior of the children or the society around us. I need not change the way government functions. I just want to change myself. There's no need to cover all the streets all around the world to protect your feet. It's just enough if you can cover your souls with a good footwear. So I need to cover myself. I need to change myself. I need to bring in a change within myself. And that is easier possible rather than trying to change the world around me. That is the meaning of knowing Tat Buddhaya. That's the second stage, discovering the higher self. By Guru Shastra Upadesha. I discover my higher nature. Tat Buddhaya, Atma Gnana. So that's getting there is the second stage. The problem what here happens here is the theoretical knowledge of knowing one's higher self, even though it is a big major step, identifying with that higher self and gradually disidentifying from the lower self takes time. That's the stage, the next stage is called tadatmanaha, to internalize that. Tadatmanaha. Even after knowing my higher self, I do not identify with that higher self. I continue to identify with my lower self, the body, egoistic self only. I am a father in love with my I have fallen in love with my individuality. I am a father, I am a child, I am a parent, like that. So identifying with body mind complex, and I do not want to give up. So that's the stage we need to get over. That's the Dehatma Vasana should go away. So that takes us to identifying with higher self. That is Tadatmana. And the next stage is the internal change of Tannishtha. Identification with higher self becomes quite natural. Like Swamiji says, gives an example of a bachelor getting married and become a householder. In the initial stages, initial days, when after he gets a bachelor gets married, it will be difficult for him, and there are times when he forgets that he is a householder. But over time, it becomes so internalized, that concept that he is a householder now. The change becomes so, he becomes so householder nishta that even in dream, he dreams as a householder. So that takes time. That internalization, that identification with the higher self becoming natural as his own nature, that is Tannishta. And then that our transformation is complete. Even though external change takes place, internal change takes time. And when that inner transformation is complete, it's called Tannishta. That's the gift, Gita for inner freedom and transformation. And such people, what will happen to such people? Jnana nirdhuta kalmasha. They are free from all impurities. And what's the next stage? They will be avoided. They will be avoiding that punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. They will reach a stage where there won't be any. They will reach a stage where there won't be a punaravritti. There is no repetition of the same samsara again and again. So what are the four stages? Tatparayana, valuing self-discovery, valuing discovery of higher self, then discovering the higher self itself by Guru Shastra Upadesha, Tad Buddhaya. And third is identifying with that higher self and gradually disidentifying with lower self. And then Tannishtha becomes their very nature. That higher self becomes their very nature. To give an example of what happens in a student's life who wants to become a doctor, initial days, the first stage is, I want to give entrance exam, I want to become a doctor. That goal is, he has a pathway about what he needs to do. That is Tat Parayana. We have to remember that there are many people who don't even have that goal. But when you have one goal, one purpose in life, I want to know my inner self. That's the first major step. I want to become a plumber. I want to become an electrician. I want to become a carpenter. I want to become a doctor, whatever it is. But he has a goal. That's that parayana. Then next, after he goes through the medical school, it's not easy. It's rigorous. It is structured for a prolonged period of time under a competent guru. And through Shastra Upadesha, he becomes a doctor. So he discovers his higher self. Tad Buddhaya. He has got that certificate. He is happy and that he knows. But what happens? It takes time. He gets into internship. When he's doing internship, when somebody calls, doctor, doctor, I am in pain. This Mr. Raju, he is still thinking I am Raju, who has got a degree in medicine. But when somebody calls, doctor, I have pain, he will not even turn around because he is still identifying with his older name. He is not identifying himself as a doctor yet. So that transformation, internalizing that Atmana will take time. Tad Atmana. So disidentification from lower self takes time. Then what happens when he becomes, when being a doctor becomes his true nature, the only nature, then what happens when he's even on a street, when somebody there is a need, he kneels down with compassion to take care of that person, even though it is not his responsibility, he is out of his work area. It becomes his second nature to help. That compassion, that being a doctor, becomes his very nature. That is Tannishta. So identification with the higher self becomes quite natural to him. That's when the true transformation from being a student to becoming a doctor happens. In the same way, exactly in the same way, the transformation of a sadhaka to moksha happens. Sadhaka to a gnani. Okay, this is the stages of inner transformation, freedom and transformation. In this one small verse, Sri Krishna takes through all the four stages. So, and then what happens to such a gnani? There won't be any repetition of samsara. He has attained moksha. He has reached a place, he has reached a state from which there is no way he can be pulled back to samsara. Apunaravrittim. Okay, so that's a place of no return. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Komal, as always, a very clear and a beautiful explanation with apt examples. So, Tat Parayanaha, value of discovering higher self, Tat Buddhaya, discovering the higher self. So, here is the sadhaka, as told in the 7th chapter again, Manushyanam Sahasreshu, Taschid Yadati Siddhaye, Yatatamapi Sarvanam Kaschinmam Vetti Tatvataha. So only few people will ask for this self-knowledge. Only few people will get the self-knowledge. Only few people will anchor with the self-knowledge. Only few people will sustain with that anchoring of that self-knowledge. Only few people amongst them. So we are the lucky lot. So how do we then graduate? Where are we in this four? I think this is like a scale that we can mark ourselves and see. Please don't use this scale to mark others as to where is the other person. It's all as such. Complete Atma Gnanam is for self alone, not to measure anybody else. So whether we are still in valuing phase, have we discovered the higher nature or at least the knowledge of the higher nature? And are we starting to disidentify slowly with the lower nature? So do we recognize that body, mind and the world is a lower order of reality? It is a mithya. By anchoring to Brahma Satya and then carry on with your duties. Only with that anchoring, the Tannishta can happen. We have heard of many Swamijis, Tadatma Ananda. Ananda is added to Tadatma because there is a complete disidentification at all times. Then that person will always be Tannishtananda only. That Tannishta refers to Gnananishta or Nididhyasanam or Vidvat Sannyasa. So wonderful explanation. So I don't have to go through this because you've completely elaborated on all these stages beautifully. And we have seen similar kind of stages in context to Karma Yoga also. This is with regards to the Gnana. In Karma Yoga, we have seen the first stage is the Adhyatma Chetasa, keep moksha again as a top priority. So, and then Sarvani Karmani Mai Sanyasya. This is the chapter 3, verse 30. Do all the offerings as the Ishvara Arpana Bhava. This is the Dasoham. And then Nirashihi. And then take all the palams as the Ishvara Prasada, which means Nishkama. So there is no material desire or selfish desires when we are doing any actions. Then Nirmama. So freedom from all the mamakara on these fruits. and then we get the jvara, freedom from the mental affliction. You see, there are a lot of overlaps and similarities. So ultimately, if you see, karma yoga and the two stages of jnana yoga are somewhat interlinked. If there is a preliminary knowledge of jnana yoga, karma yoga becomes easier. And then with karma yoga, of course, gradations from discovering to anchoring and tad buddhaya, and then tannishta becomes a lot more easy. So we move on to the next verse, another beautiful verse. I'll invite Dr. Rajeshwari, please, to explain this 18th verse.
Gurubhyo Namaha. As we just learned, chapter 5 actually teaches us the essence of the Vedas. In other words, Bhagavad Gita itself. In verse 18, Sri Krishna tells Arjuna what is the benefit to this Tannishta or the Jnani of gaining this self-knowledge. So the verse is Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Sunichaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshinaha. So the key word here is Pandita Samadarshinaha. That means the wise people, they see the same Brahman. In what do they see? In the Brahman. Here the Brahman is a knowledgeable person with humility. Gavi is the cow, elephant is Hastini, dog is Shuni, and Swapaka is a dog eater or a Paraya. Panditas see all these living beings as the same, or they see the same Brahman. So the question now arises, how is it possible? We see all these different physical characteristics and also mental characteristics. For example, the Brahmin here is not by birth. Brahmin is Vidya Vinaya Sampanna Brahmin, the one Vidya Dadati Vinayam. So this Brahmin who is knowledgeable is also humble. Therefore, his Pradhana Gunam is Satvika Gunam. So he is placed at the highest order. Next comes the cow or the Rajasic and Satvik mixed guna living being with Rajasika Pradhana Gunam. Then you have the Tamasika Guna Pradhana, elephant, dog, and the Paraya who is placed at the lowest order of the human beings. So now we have seen all these differences. So I am doubtful, how do I see this Samadrishti or Samadarsanam? So how does this come? This comes by spiritual wisdom. So what is this spiritual wisdom which the Jnani has attained? This comes, for example, if I have a good dress sense, I'm going to see what the other person, how the other person is dressed. But if I think of myself as rational and intellectual, I will see God as omniscient. Similarly, if I think I am Nirguna Chaitanyam, for me God is also Nirguna Chaitanya Swarupa. So the Jnani's perspective here has changed. How is this changed is, he is not seeing himself as the body-mind complex. Not just that, he knows that he is the consciousness within this body-mind complex. And not only that, he knows that he is the actual Atma with the incidental body. He is not the body-mind with Atma. So this change in perspective is due to Jnana Chakshusha. He sees with his spiritual eyes. And this change, what does it bring? It brings the permanent Ananda. So this Atma which he sees within himself, he sees in all the sentient beings also. Because as told by the previous speaker, he has attained that inner realization that Atma or consciousness is the only reality in life. The next slide, please. So thousands of years later, this has been taught to us by Sri Paramashiva himself through this incident in Adi Shankara's life. We know this story where Adi Shankara comes across the Chandala and he asks the Chandala to move out of his way. The Chandala asks Adi Shankara, what is it you want me to move? Do you want me to move my body or my Atma? So this, thereby teaching us that Brahman is the same in every living being. This teaching has been repeatedly reinforced because this is the only truth. So now Sri Adi Shankara has depicted this truth in this beautiful Dhanyashtakam slokam. Sampurnam Jagat Eva Nandavanam. Sarve api kalpadrumaha. Gangam vari samastavari. Nivaha punya samasta kriyaha. Vacha prakruta samskrita suštishro varanasi medini. Vacha sarva vastitrasya vastu visaya drushte parabrahmani. So it's beautiful. It means the one who has really Brahman in all aspects, that is the total realization, and it has become his nature. For him, the whole world is the Nandavanam, heavenly garden. And all the objects are the Kalpadhruma, the Kalpavriksha, the wish-yielding trees. And every water body he sees, the rivers, ponds, lakes, everything becomes the holy Ganges to him. And all his actions, including the foolish talks or words, they are only Vedanta Vakyas. And for such a jnani, the entire earth is Varanasi, the holy city. Every thought or awareness of his reveals to him only Brahman. So he lives in Brahman, he has become one with Brahman. However, with this Atma Abheda, we should remember there will always be Vyavaharika Bheda. We cannot treat, in the material world, we cannot treat everyone as the same. For example, I can feed grass to the cow, but I cannot feed grass to the dog. So there will be transactional differences, although there is no difference in the inner self itself. Next slide, please. To conclude, forms and names can be different and gunas can be different. A jnani sees the same Atma in all living beings. Swami Param gives an example of the gold. See, the gold with different names are available in different forms, like bangle or chain or ring. However, the Swarnatvam or the goldness of it is the actual truth. Without that, there are no various ornaments. So, however, the transactional differences will be there. And this is the core of Advaitam. When there are no two things, where then there is the difference. So, Samadarshanam is the result of Advaitam. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rajeshwari, for another beautiful explanation. So that is the challenge, really, the practical challenge that we have. We see so much of differences in the world, but we need to take everything as samam. Is it true that we should not then react for something bad or unacceptable things which are happening outside? Swamiji also makes it clear that it does not mean that at all. In fact, whatever practical steps which may be required to handle the scenario, you should very much do that. How should you do it? With an attitude that there is samatvam as far as the Atma Vichara is concerned. There is abheda when you take the Atmam, whereas there is Veda when you take Anatma. So if there are things, if you are anchoring into this knowledge, then you are likely to deal with that scenario more practically than dealing with it emotionally. In psychology also, we translate it at a different level. If we have any conflicts or problems with a person in, at work or at home, sometimes we reject the whole relationship or the person. But in reality, what is expected is you reject an issue. If you have a difference, the difference is at an issue level, not with the person. So separate the issue with the person. Then you are likely to find a practical solution. Then that hatredness will not be there. The consequences of hatredness will not be there. Now, in psychology, it is talking about this. And the ultimate form of samatvam is Advaitam. Kshetragnam chapimam viddi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Kshetragna is the knower of the kshetram, which is the body. That is there in everywhere, every jivarashi, and also every jadarashi also as a form of sat. So that is the Vishwarupa Darshana. That is the Divya Chakshu through Atma Gnanam. Our attitude towards the entire universe has to be Samatvam. And we have studied this in the Sthita Prajna portion also. Dukkheshu Anudvignamanaha, Sukheshu Vegataspruha. Vitaraga. Vitaraga. I think there is something else. Sthitadir Muni Ruchyate. So basically, there is no inflections in the mind if the situation is not good, if there is a lot of bad things happening, there is not so much of sorrow and despondency. At the same time, sukheshu vigatas dukkeshu anudvignamanaha sukheshu vigataspraha. So there is no exaltation or elation when things are going right. Managing success is equally a problem. If we know how to manage success, we can manage failures very well. So, and both the things are not there. There is a samatva bhava, and that comes naturally for a tannishta, one who is already anchored. That comes naturally for a vidvat sannyasa. Whereas for a vividisha sannyasa, or somebody who is into grihastha and working on all of this, we can consciously make an effort to start seeing at every given opportunity. We get so many opportunities every day where we see so much of differences at work, at home, on the road, everywhere. Now the election season, lot of differences. But let there be a samatva bhavana in the background, and then you can deal with the differences practically. And you have also talked about the Manisha Panchakam that Adi Shankaracharya exalted after he realized the mistake of rejecting the Chandala. Chandala is a bit like a Swapaka. Even in that picture that you had put in, we saw the dogs. Swapaka is an uncultured person, more of tamasic nature. So all the gunas, Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic guna again belong to body-mind complex. And there will be differences in that. Whereas the Atma, which is the guna theta, which is beyond all these gunas, there are absolutely no changes or differences there. And that Atma is same in everybody. And Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam also, the concept comes from this only. Those who see people are different, or the people of lower order of intellect, is what that shloka says in Maha Upanishad, where the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam comes. Those who sees that everybody is like me only, and that is the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That we will move on to the next verse. I invite Dr. Anupama Shetty to explain the next verse, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, verse 19. Iha eva taihi jitaha sargo, esham samye sthitam manaha, nirdosham hi samam brahma, tasmat brahmani te sthitaha. This verse clarifies a possible doubt created by the previous mantra. Samadarshana is a concept of Jnana Khanda, wherein there is no bheda between two Jivatmas, nor between Jivatma and Ishvara. Sarva Eka Atma Bhava. Karma Khanda, however, is diagonally opposite. A guru, a parent, the elderly have to be revered. How can a Jnani and a Shvapaka be identical? There seems to be a conflict between Dharma Shastra and Brahma Shastra. Samadarshanam, we should know, as our core vision, a conviction stemming from our subconscious mind, even though our sense organs perceive differences. This is possible with Atma Anatma Viveka, the conviction Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithyam. Quoting Dakshinamurti Stotra, Yasya eva spuranam sadatmakam asatkalpartakam bhasate. This Bimba Chaitanyam is uniform in all. This is Samadarshanam. The other topic discussed here is, does one have to die to attain moksha? Krishna uses the word iha eva, meaning moksha is possible here and now. For whom? For people who have samadrishti, abheda drishti, the jnanis, thaihi sarga jitaha. Sarga here means Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam cycle or samsara, and Jita means conquered. So, how does the Jnani conquer samsara? With a perspective that he's not subject to birth and death, benefit being there's no fear of mortality. Na jayate mriyate vana kajat kadachit, nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyaha. So, how do you conquer rebirth? By conquering birth. This is an understanding that I have been, I am, and I ever will be Atma. What type of Atma? Trikala Janma Rahita Atma Aham Asmi. This means Sukshma Sharira Abhimana has to be dropped. What is qualification required? Yesham Manaha Samye Sthitam. The mind should be anchored in Samam Brahma. And who are these Samadrishis? The Panditas who have done Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. What have they mastered? Sargaha or Janma by remaining in the binary format in Samam Brahma. So, what is the nature of this Samavastu? Samam Brahma is Satchit Ananda Brahma, the uniform Nirdosha string that passes immanently and transcendently through everyone. Samam Brahma is Nirdosham. Remember, the Samatvam perceived does not belong to the Sharira, but to Nirdosham Brahma. When is Brahman free from doshas? All the time. Understanding Nirdosham, for a deluded person, Atma appears to be contaminated with karma, ragadvesha, punya papam. It's full of doshas. This is anyonya adhyasa. A jnani knows that these are attributes of anatma and not atma. Atma for him is nirdosham. He is able to distance or neighborize the anatma with its doshas. Neighborization is the ability to look at anatma as if it is a neighbor with asangatvam. That means by dropping dehabhimana. The types of abhimana are sahaja tadatmyam, prantija tadatmyam, and karmaja tadatmyam. So Vishesha abhimana is prantija tadatmyam, which goes away with jnanam, and samanya abhimana is karmaja tadatmyam, which is due to prarabdha and remains up to death. How does this neighborization help? It enables falsification of vasanas and the mind. Vasana kshaya means vasana mityatva nischaya, and manonasha means mano nityatva nischaya. There are infinite vasanas from infinite births. So how many more births do we need to get rid of vasanas? No more. It happens instantaneously with jnanam that Brahma Satyam Jagat Mityam Aham Brahma Eva Na Paraha. Concluding, Samadarshis are Brahmani Sthitas. They remain in the binary format throughout all Vyavaharika transactions. They do not incur Punya Papa. Instead, they attain Moksha Iha Eva, here and now. This is Jivan Mukti. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anupama, for another brilliant explanation of this verse. This is a very important verse which again affirms Jivan Mukti. There are some spiritual paths which says that Mukti is not in this world, which is only outside the realms of our life. But the very concept of Vedanta, particularly Advaita Vedanta, is that Jivan Mukti is possible. It is here and now. And therefore, everybody should practice these things. It's not for, the life afterwards. Ihaiva, here itself, in this life itself, that is very clearly mentioned in this particular verse. And the person who is absolutely anchored in this jnanam will completely reject the karmas and karma phalas which belong to the body mind, and therefore is out of the punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam cycle. And such a person, as we saw in the previous verse also, will continue to have the samadrishti. So, and this person is the Jnananishta. He is the Brahman, not Brahmanishta. So, as told in one of the verses by Shankaracharya, the Brahmaiva na Brahmavid. is no longer a Brahmavid, no longer a Gnana Nishta, but a Brahman himself or herself. So with this, we conclude today's satsang, and thank you everybody for this wonderful presentation. And thanks once again to all the acharyas and Dr. Timappa. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you. We covered some Nididhyashanam shlokas today, requiring constant dwelling for internalization. We are grateful to our gurus and our Guru Parampara. We're grateful to Dr. Divakar and all the speakers of the day, Dr. Rama, Dr. Sandhya, Dr. Komal, Dr. Rajeshwari, and Dr. Anupama. Thank you to all our listeners for your constant support. We meet again on Friday for Katha Upanishad, session 24, the 19th of April, 2024. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.